Hey, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Connection Loop podcast. I'm Rob. I have with us today Jason Kramer, who's the founder and CEO of Cultivize, which is the CRM guru for sales, marketing, and agency teams, and really helping them select the right CRM solution for them, along with helping them master the big art of lead nurturing while sewing up those holes in the sales funnel for ultimate sales growth. So, Jason, thanks so much for joining us today and welcome in.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're the only two working today, but hey, I'm happy to be here.
I know everybody else is either at the inauguration, they're doing something,
Yeah,
probably
or they got
everyone's
the
out there
order
doing stuff.
reply. Yeah,
Hey, but we're here. So
that's
here we
right.
go.
Absolutely.
So talk to me a little bit about just a little intro about yourself and kind of how you got to where you are now. You're an email strategist, you're an aspiring chef. Hey, you deal about plans, right? You got plans at the CRM, you got plans in the kitchen. Just talk to us a little bit about
That's
yourself.
right. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot to cover. That could be a whole episode by itself. So really quick, I mean, my background is in marketing and design. That's kind of how I get started when I went to school for many years ago. And so I started working in agencies, doing graphic design work. I hung my first shingle, as they say, opened a boutique advertising boutique, if you will, doing a lot of web development and other design work. Ran that business for 16 years, Rob. And what I learned in that time was that there are a lot of companies that were doing email marketing and we're spending a lot of money on inbound marketing, right? Google ads, social, all these different things, going to trade shows. What they weren't doing is capturing all that information in a central system, a CRM. And so they weren't really able to understand what was working, what was pushing the needle. And so that's why we started Cultivize. Now it's about 6 years ago, to be able to help businesses get better insights on their data and actually be able to use that data to convert leads into sales.
Yeah, it's a kind of a old school to think about the back in the day when CRMs were just repositories for information, but now they can do so much.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have the right tools and know how to use them. Yeah,
That being key, exactly.
right,
So
exactly.
talk to us a little bit about the sales funnel stuff, which I always think is interesting because you hear about it all the time. Sales funnels, sales funnels, sales funnels. Well, talk to us how just the insight for you guys in terms of recognizing those leaks that can happen in a sales funnel. And kind of from a broad view, how do you kind of lean in to try to stop them?
Well, I think the most common thing that we see is when you have a business, and we've seen this in all different organizations, so it's not just one industry, and you're sending a lot of quotes, a lot of proposals, and it may be, it could be 20 a month, it could be 100 a month, but the point is that there's no follow up to that process. So the leaks in the funnel typically come when you haven't heard from somebody, you've sent them a few emails, you've reached out for a couple months, they haven't gotten back to you. And Rob, what do most people say and salespeople say? Oh, they must have gone in a different direction or they decided not to move forward. And they sort of just forget about it and move on. The likelihood of that person hiring your competitor is extremely high. If they've gotten to the point of getting a proposal, they're at some point going to make a decision. They may not make it in the next few months. It may take them a year or two. But if you're not nurturing and staying in front of that person to be educational, to perform and provide information that's going to make them make the right decision and a smart decision and feel comfortable with you and your team, then why did you put all that work in the upfront place? Right now, there are some businesses where it's a quick sale. It only takes a few days or a few hours to close something.
Mhm.
The leakage in those scenarios aren't as high. But when you have a longer sales process, that's the number one place people fall off is when there's very little organized follow up.
Do you think it has a lot to do sometimes with those larger, possibly enterprise accounts or anything where there are so many different places the deal has to get approved in terms of number of contacts, or is it really not that much? It could be maybe five different people that you're dealing with, but as long as, or one, but it has to be organized and kind of systematized, like you talk about.
Yeah, I don't think it's really particularly that there's so many decision makers. I think it's more the fact that um, that decision might just take a while, right?
Mhm.
Depending upon what you're selling, the cost of that investment. Maybe they're ending a contract and you're trying to sell them something new, but their contract doesn't end for 6 months.
Yeah.
There's nothing you or them can do about that. You have to wait for the contract to end. So, I don't think it really matters about that so much. I think it's more about the fact that people are. Um, they just are hungry because they want those deals to close quickly, and that's
Yeah.
what they're focused on. But the deals that take a little bit longer, they get a little impatient and they sort of just, brush them off to the side.
Do you find that with Cultivize clients, there's some similarity across the board of people not recognizing the holes in their sales funnel? like they think there are no holes, or maybe they're not sure, but you
Yeah.
right away are like, look, you got it here, that kind of deal.
Well, one is, and the biggest one is that they don't have a CRM, right? So they're using spreadsheets, right, to
Mhm.
track everything, or they're not even using a spreadsheet. They're just, sending out quotes through QuickBooks or some quoting tool, and they're not looking to see anything else besides, okay, how many quotes did we send, and
Yeah.
how many did we win, how many did we lose? Like, there's no system. So that's a huge red flag. If you don't have a system right now to manage your pipeline, that's then of course there's going to be things falling through because there is no pipeline. It's all up here in your head, or written down on a piece of paper.
Paper, what's that? No, just kidding.
Yeah.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
Let's talk about data. So people, it's a data-driven world now. It
Sure.
helps us learn, right? So you talk about a lot about that. So let's talk about um, data-driven decision making for sales and marketing. And, particularly, in sales, where reps and they want to make growth, they want to make the right decisions. So from you, what have you kind of seen in terms of the right kind of data that they should be looking for?
Well, that's a great question, Rob. So there's so much data out there, right? And depending on the systems you have, you may be overwhelmed with data, and it's to the point where it's like, okay, I'm not even going to look at it because I could spend a week looking at this data trying to make heads and tails of it. Every business has different KPIs, key performance indicators that they should be looking at. And so there's not necessarily universal, but some things that are common are, how long does it take for us to win a piece of business? How long does it take to go from that discovery call to a proposal? Is it taking a week? Is it taking 3 weeks? If you're not tracking those types of indicators, then you're just assuming your sales process buttoned up as it possibly could be. But if you have that data, you can say, oh, well, we always thought that it took, 2 weeks to close a deal. Our system is telling us it's taking us 45 days. That's not good. We need to fix that. Other things that are important too is all the things leading up to the sale. So you might want to know all the emails we're sending to this person, follow-up emails, are those contributing? A quick story, we set up over the summer a couple of new clients. We've really tapped into the home service provider space. So construction, all those types of related fields where you're having somebody come to your home and do something for you. And so we had a roofing company who didn't think follow up is necessary. They're like, okay, we do about 1,000 quotes a year. We're doing about $10 million in revenue. Like, our system is good, right? But they knew that they didn't have a CRM. They needed that, but they were not as convinced that there's a problem with follow up. And I said, listen, you only have 3 salespeople. 900 quotes a year managed by 3 salespeople is a huge undertaking. And I said, there's a huge percentage that don't say yes, or they don't get back to you. We need a follow up there. We need something that can assist. It's almost like hiring another salesperson without paying them $60,000 a year or more. And so what we were able to show them in a few short months, Rob, these follow up emails. Hey, did you get your quote? Hey, it's been a few weeks. Do you have any questions about the proposal we sent you for your roof? Those equivalated to over $1.5 million in revenue for them. And we were able to connect those emails to say that these emails influenced somebody calling them back, clicking a link to schedule another appointment. And so those become very powerful. And those are, again, the indicators. And for that particular client, they want to get simple things like they want to get their average days to sell
Mhm.
down. They
Yep.
want to get their average cost of a roof up, which means better sales tactics by the sales team. Hey, we can do all that. We could also put a coating on your roof to protect against fungus and all these different things. An extra $2,000. You're already spending 20 grand. What's another 2 grand? This is why you should do it. So
Yeah.
these are all the things that can be helpful as indicators to be able to allow that business owner or the C level, even the salesperson, to
Yeah.
kind of, quite frankly, do a better job of what they're doing in terms of selling.
That's great advice. I think a lot of times too, again, it's like looking at that data. You're not guessing. You're going in there like a scientist, like you're really
Yep.
going in and focusing, and you get the aggregate of averages of like this is what it looks like, and then you're able to really kind of plan out and systematize what you need to systematize. So that's really
Absolutely. And if I can
really
add one more really important
yeah.
one to that, is that it's the marketing spend and not knowing what is actually bringing in not only the total number of leads, right?
Mhm.
Because you could easily track that, how many people filled out a form or came from AdWords, et cetera. But how many of those turned into a qualified lead? And out of those, how much revenue do we actually generate? So if you're spending 5 grand, 10 grand a month on AdWords, but you're only generating $2,000 worth of revenue, you're losing $8,000 a month on AdWords, and something's wrong there. Something needs to be fixed. And so I think that's a huge, huge opportunity for clients to connect that marketing data to sales, because otherwise you're just going to be opening up your sort of bank account and just bleeding money without really knowing if it's actually making you money or not. And that's more so than not, that's not usually tracked. When companies are spending like under $50,000 a year on marketing, they're not even looking at that data. And it's very easy to look at. They just overlook it.
Well, as the kids like to say, the math is not mathing. So that definitely has something to do with it. So let's look at you guys, Server Cultivize. So let's look at what's been the most effective sales strategy for you guys within the past year, 2024, kind of leading into the new year here. What has worked for you guys?
So, I mean, so we do what we preach. I mean, so we've been using, one of the CRMs that we sell and we help set up for clients for well over, a decade. Even before Cultivize was in business, I was using this for the agency. And so the consistency, I think, of messaging is really important. So example of that would be, actually just last week, I'll share another quick story. A big moving company, multi-million-dollar organization in Florida. I spoke to them about a year ago. They were all excited. They wanted to move forward. And then boom, radio silence, nothing. There wasn't even like, hey, we're thinking about this. And so they were just on my monthly newsletter, right, getting content. And out of nowhere, 2 weeks ago, I get a call from one of the partners. We'd like to move forward. When can we talk? And so now, would they have called if I didn't keep in front of them? Maybe, maybe not. I'm convinced they wouldn't have, because they've been like, oh, I don't remember who that was that we spoke to. It was so long ago. Right. But the fact that I kept on educating them, that's a big success factor. I think another piece of it is not being scared to act on information. So, Rob, a lot of times people are going to raise their hand, but they're not going to raise your hand and tap your shoulder and say, hey, Rob, this is awesome. We need the video messaging like in our system. They might just be going to your website, looking at demos, looking at information, reading case studies, reading testimonials, doing whatever they might be doing. If you're not aware of that, it's the same thing as you walking into a car dealer showroom and everybody ignoring you. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Like, right. I want me to buy a car. How come he's talking to me, right? Like, I'm here. Like, it's not like I had nothing better to do on my Saturday morning. Like, I'm here for a reason. Right. But so many salespeople, it's not because they don't want to or they're scared to. They just don't have the insight to know who's walked into the showroom and who's looking around. So if you have a CRM and you're not using those tools, that's an extreme benefit. And I know it's helped me and Cultivize close more deals, not only last year, but every year, because we're not scared to call those people like, hey, Rob, how's it going? We're not saying, hey, you were on our website. We're just calling you at the prime time when we know that we're top of mind, right, on your mind. So that's, I'd say, the two success factors that have worked well for us.
And I think people love information, especially when they can be almost taken into like a back room, like, hey, listen, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but check this out. This is great. Are you aware that CRM has this capability? Are you aware of this little thing? Are you aware of this? And it's almost like a little hack. Like, when people get online and they're watching videos, they're like, oh, they're looking, whether it's for a recipe, whether it's for, the new sales technique. People that love, I think, info where I just wanted to share this with you because this is working. So I think that constant contact of leaning into the leads like that and nurturing them like you talk about is one of the biggest things, because when you are reaching back out, you are nurturing. That's a part of nurturing until they become a client. So, really
absolutely.
Great. Okay, here we go. What's the biggest thing you learned this past year? Dive back into 2024. What was the biggest thing?
Sure. So I put anybody that would follow me that's listening and looks at me on LinkedIn or any platform, YouTube, etc. I put in a lot of effort last year into thought leadership content. I don't even know how many hundreds of videos we've created and other content last year. And what that taught me is that it's good to kind of get the conversation going, but thought leadership is a very top of the funnel strategy. And so I was expecting maybe a little bit more conversation out of that would lead into some sales. I didn't really have a clear intention of what the outcome would be, because the strategy we had for that thought leadership was something we've never done before. We've created a lot of great content, but what it taught me is it's not the best mechanism for us as a company to generate leads. It's really good to get information out there, but it's a lead gen kind of effort. And so I've rehashed kind of our strategy for 2025 based on that information, based on that data, right? So we talked before about insights. if I didn't have the data, I didn't look at it, I'd be like, oh, the content's great. Like everybody loves it. Keep pushing it. But if we compare that to what the net results were,
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense kind of at the volume and scale that we were doing. We were doing a ton of content. So we're going to like reshift that focus to some other things. So that would be one of the things that for sure I learned last year. Yeah.
Thought leadership content, TLC.
Yeah.
TLC. Yeah, and I think, content, my God, with social media and sales, it's like they've kind of merged. Remember when HubSpot was big on sales and marketing coming together and they were like coined, I think, the phrase smarketing, right?
Hmm.
It feels like social media videos and posts where and we do a lot of this on LinkedIn where, we'll say, hey, listen, if you're not using a teleprompter, you should use one. It's great keeping you efficient. These little great tips on stuff. I
Yeah.
feel like your content, with thought leadership on YouTube and other places that you put it, this is stuff people crave. Like they grab their phone. Most people, everyone has their phone on them. They're
Hmm.
on there, they're checking it out. They see it, they know you, they can hear you, they can, they really almost feel like they know you. And that kind of leans into the sales opportunities because a lot of times, oh, I saw your videos, and that kind of leans into the expertise part of it.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying there's not value to it. It's just in
Mhm.
terms of my effort because I was, I had the team behind me doing it, but I'm the one that's on camera, and
Right.
then in fact, anybody wants to look, I don't know if you saw it, Rob, but at the end of last year, we put out a blooper reel. So we took
Mhm.
all of like outtakes for the entire year of me just totally
Love it.
messing up in front of the camera, which was a
Love
lot
it.
of fun. So if you want to have a good laugh, it's a really short video, but it's just all some really funny outtakes of that scene behind the scenes of what it takes to put that together.
That's fantastic. We do that stuff all the time. Like Ruben and I, and Darius too, we do these videos, we mess up. We always have blooper reel stuff because, at the end of the day, when you watch a finished video, oh, wow, someone could be like, oh man, I don't know if I can do that. You got it. It's like, listen, it's hardly ever in one take. It's
Right.
always fun. You always have some mess ups, and, a little cough, little pause, little screw up on the words. It happens to all of us. And then
Hmm.
we eventually get the stuff out that we want. Our big thing that we always tell everyone is don't worry about being perfect. Just be yourself.
Yeah.
Practice doesn't make perfect, it makes progress. So that's the big thing. Okay, you ready for the last one? This is the big one.
Let's
This is the
go.
big one we ask everybody. What is the biggest mistake you've ever made in terms of business sales? Like you were like, oh man, I made that mistake and I learned so much from it. But what would it be for you? Anything kind of pop out?
Well, I mean, I would say that the one of the biggest mistakes was so I started off as they say a skillpreneur, right? So
Mhm.
I was a graphic designer, freelancing on the side when I worked at an agency full time. I was like, all right, overhead's low, living with a couple of guys in Brooklyn, New York, right? I don't have any kids, family yet. Let me start up a business. I think I could turn this into a business. I knew nothing about running a business, and so I think the biggest mistake for me as in my early 20s starting my first company, I could figure this out as I go, right?
Mhm.
Like I didn't think that I needed to bring in other experts to help sort of guide me and navigate me. And so it took me a couple of years, in fact, probably like 3 or 4 years before I started working with sales trainers, with business consultants, with other people that could help really mold where I wanted to take the business, how the business should operate. Little things that you don't really think about, like even profit margin, right? And like
Mhm.
understanding like, is the business making money or are you just sort of like running a business as a hobby? And so
Sure.
you learn a lot of these things trial by error. So I think my biggest, I don't know if I would call it a mistake, but I think regret is not bringing in more of that outside expertise at an early
Mhm.
stage and sort of not being stubborn, just not being aware that even those things existed. Um, because I think I definitely could have catapulted the business a lot faster had I had those resources early on in the business.
Yeah, I think if we all, just it's almost like not being as myopic sometimes, but sometimes when you're early on, you're starting things, you kind of have to be. You're on the details, you're on everything,
Mhm.
you're focusing on it, and it's almost like having those fresh set of eyes for someone to kind of view something and be like, hey, I was watching that. Did you pick that up? Oh, I didn't even see that. Like
Yeah.
that's happened a bunch of times with me over the course of my life. Whatever it is, like you're
Mhm.
so into it that you're not able to step back and kind of say, oh, that's that thing that I missed.
Right.
Which is really nice.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So before we go, any piece of advice for all the good sales reps out there, marketing reps, like anything you want
So
to say?
yeah, I mean, I would say this. I mean, so from a salesperson, that's out there, kind of in the trenches, you know, dialing for dollars, as they say, right? If you're dialing, maybe you're emailing for dollars. But the point is, think about what you do every day in terms of how you prioritize your day. Are you prioritizing your day based on information that is going to help you be the most successful in terms of the ratio of who you're going to call and who's going to pick up the phone and who you're going to have a good conversation with that's going to lead to that next phase, or you just kind of randomly kind of going about your day and be like, okay, like who should I call today? And there's no rhythm behind it in terms of information. I think that's a huge shift. It's a mind shift, but it's also a shift in how you operate. You can't go build a house with 3 nails and a hammer. It's not going to happen, right? You need tools that help you do your job. And so I'd say if you don't have those tools, right? We talked a lot about CRM today, Rob.
Yep.
Then what I would recommend is talk to your sales manager, talk to leadership, ask them what kind of tools can they give you to help you succeed. And then if you're in a leadership role, well, how are you managing your team under you? If there is no CRM, if there is no system, how do you know what Jason and Rob have in their pipeline? How do you know how many calls they're making, how many emails they're sending, what their projected revenue is going to be? It doesn't matter how many calls they made. It's really about the outcome of those calls. And so I would say those are two really important things to help steer both the salespeople and then the senior leadership in the right direction for this year in 2025 to be poised to not work harder, but really work smarter when it comes to trying to grow their business.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, we always talk about a Dubb, like let the technology make it easier for you. Let the strategy make it easier for you. It's not about trying to pick up your tech stack and have all these things that make it more difficult. It's about if it makes your job easier and it lets you be more of you and you're leaning into the data like you're talking about, it's putting you in the right direction, then that's the path you want to be on. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Jason, thanks so much for joining me today, man. That's fantastic knowledge you just dropped there for everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great. And if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of just offer something to the audience that's listening here. So all of the information I talked before about, reaching me on social media, you can certainly look me up, but you can also go to afterthelead.com. At afterthelead.com, there is going to be a few different resources. So there's going to be a couple of playbooks that we've written about finding the right CRM, about how to leverage the CRM you have. We have playbooks, all which are free for understanding how to nurture your leads, like we talked about today, which is a big focus of our conversation. Practical advice that you could put into play. Some of it you can do even without a CRM. Lead scoring, which we didn't talk about. We have a whole guide on how to use lead scoring and how effective it can be to help understand who to focus on. And then the last piece I want to offer, Rob, to your audience, we have a new tool we just put out called Profit Path. It's interconnected Google Sheets for either solopreneurs or really small businesses that aren't quite ready for a full-on CRM. And it allows them to track all their leads, their opportunities, to get some basic reporting to understand, like what we said before, which marketing is really driving the needle and working. All that information is at afterthelead.com. And then for your audience, I want to give them $50 off the cost of that tool. So if they use the coupon code Dubb50, which we'll put in any show notes that might be available, that'll allow them to take $50 off of that. And it's a one-time $199 tool. So there's no lifetime, there's no, annual or monthly fee. Just pay $199 minus that $50, $149, and then you'll be able to get what I think are really well-designed Google Sheets that are going to be more than a step above than what you might be using already today. So with that, if anybody has any questions, they could also always reach out to me with any questions, and be happy to get back to them.
That's awesome. That's great stuff. People love discounts. They love value, and that's a wonderful way to offer it. So, Jason, thanks so much for joining me today, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Take care.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you at the next episode.